Hello, my name is Paul Rogers, and I'm head of daylight certification at the Swedish consultancy firm ACC Glass and Facade Consultants. I'm joined today by my colleagues from ACC, Eftychia Stamataki and Perez Morata. The name of this session is Beyond the Metrics. And just what is it we're trying to do in this session, Angel?
Well, as daylight specialists, we have around 200 active projects at the moment, and the majority of these are offices and housing applying for building certification. But I believe that there is more to daylight than just pass and fail. So we're going to explore that idea today.
Yes, I agree. I think that there is much more at play here than our everyday toolkit of metrics can describe. In many ways, the metrics we normally use tell only a limited part of the story.
Right, and we've selected 5 rather famous and well-known case study buildings for this purpose. They are the Pantheon in Rome, the Stockholm Library, the Villa Savoie, Viola Church, and Bagsved Church. Now, these types of buildings are not normally the type of buildings which undergo daylight assessment, are they?
No, they're not, but that is exactly why these buildings are perhaps best to explore the shortfalls of the standard metrics we use today. Certification systems are generally intended for offices, housing, and such buildings. But if we run those type of buildings, it would be harder to see the shortfalls of the metrics. But it is not to say that offices and housing don't have some of these more difficult qualities to describe.
Yes, the buildings we're examining today have a level of complexity and subtlety that we generally don't see in offices or housing, so they are the right subjects for our study here today.
So it's my understanding that we will be dealing with a whole pile of metrics today from various certification systems. Angel, can you take us through them?
Yes. First, we're going to start with Miljöbyggnad, the domestic Swedish certification system. Then we will follow up with BREEAM, the European Standard 17037-2018. And finally with LEED 4.1, which is of course based on LM83.
The test for Miljöbyggnad is pretty straightforward. Here there is a median daylight factor of minimum 0.8% for bronze, 1.0% for silver, and 1.3% for gold.
When it comes to BREEAM, we use 2 different methods: average daylight factor and average illuminance, our first climate-based metric. Both of these have a side metric to ensure uniformity in the space and a minimum daylight. Please keep in mind that the targets for average daylight factor will vary according to the location of the building.
For the European standard, we have the target and minimum target daylight factors. Like in BREEAM, the thresholds are location specific. And then we also have the climate-based target and minimum target illuminances. And then, of course, those have also fixed thresholds. Also, from the European standard, we have tested the buildings against DGB exceedance that corresponds to the minimum level of glare protection.
Finally, we will also test LEED version 4.1 for criteria option 1, which includes spatial daylight autonomy, otherwise known as SDA, and the metric annual sunlight exposure, otherwise known as ASE.
So today we will not be explaining any of these certification systems or metrics to any great degree. Rather, if those of you in the audience are not already familiar with these metrics used in these certification systems, then I strongly advise that you pause this session now and return when you have referred to the relevant modules in the NLITED website.
Yes, it is kind of essential background if you are going to understand what we are talking about today.
Before we leave you, we also would like to acknowledge the contribution of other team members at the ACC to this project, specifically Pedro Ajenjo, Mikhail Todorov, Eftychia, and Anton Hendricks.